heard that term before.
That's a technical expression. They're adjusting the volume, you see.
You've been here all week, huh, in L.A.?
Yeah, I've been in and out of town. I've been out here since, almost a month and a half now. I was in the hospital out here.
For your leg?
And then we started the tour in Vancouver. And then we just came down, so we go to Santa Barbara tomorrow, so we're just going to be in town. We only got about 4 more days. Oh, that's great. I love that place up there.
Me too.
Except they have the decibel leveler up there.
Do?
Oh, yeah, the DB man.
Which
we always
play
at the Bowl.
Yeah, that's beautiful. God, I saw Bruce Springsteen up there.
Yeah, but we had a great crowd there last year. But they do, it's like Neighbors on the hillside, and it's a night show. Usually we play in the afternoon.
They've been trying to get the DB rule here at Universal Amphitheater, too.
I'm going to grab one of those.
Yes?
Budweiser's out.
It's an afternoon show. It is?
No, it's a night.
When did you hear that? No, but didn't they changed it to night because the guy fucked up. Yeah, he advertised it. No, really. I'm sure. I better call Bobby and make. I did that one time. I was working by myself in Texas, so I'd have the contracts and look at them, and so I saw 12 o'clock on the show, and I went, all right, midnight show, you know. And I was in Austin or somewhere, and next thing the phone rings and it's going, hello, and I said, you know that you're supposed to be in. It was a noon show, and I went, oh, I'd blown the whole thing.
2 p.m. on the itinerary. Hasn't been changed?
It has been. I'm pretty sure because Bobby told me.
ABC doesn't know.
Good. Let him show up. No, I'm pretty because the guy fouled up. It's like Bobby. This guy up there is. Yeah, call Bobby because he knows. Because there's something about Santa Barbara that's funky. I know. I remember that. It was mentioned sometime during the evening last night.
Can you hear me?
How's that? Yeah.
I think we're getting a leakage from A. Is anything going on in A?
I will go run and check.
I heard something, but it might be the air conditioning. Yeah.
You belong to me.
Do you drive up there or fly?
We're going to drive up. Yeah.
Oh, it's a nice drive.
Oh, yeah.
If your air-conditioned limo comes along.
Oh, yeah, we get back on ours tomorrow, you know.
Taken care of.
Thank you so much. Let me know when you're ready to roll.
We are rolling.
Oh, we are.
Oh.
Hey, you seem to have a strange appendage attached to your leg.
Yeah, we couldn't help
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Oh, I've been living with it now. Actually, it's getting sort of comfortable. I hate to say it, you know. I try to get as much sympathy as I can out of a broken leg. That's the one advantage. Everybody's a little more, here, can I get you this? Can I get you that? But
is it a zip-up cast?
No, it's macrame. It's that's what it looks like. It's some kind of plastic. I had on the plaster one for 7 weeks, and that was terrible because we were working, and everywhere it was supposed to be nice. And we went to the Northwest. It was supposed to be nice and cool, and it's a heat wave. And so I got this on last week, and it's much nicer. 4 more weeks, and I'll be done.
Can you tell us a story about how the cats run
The real sliding in the second story. Yeah, it's. I'd come back. I'd been on the boat, and I was getting ready to come out to Los Angeles for the Eagles Rolling Stone softball game. I'd been recruited by Coach Fry to come play, and so I'd gone and bought all this new gear, and I'd come back from the boat, so I was pretty healthy. I'd been cranking winches all week, so I was in relatively good shape. I was in training for the big game, and so I went to Palm Beach to visit some friends, and this friend called one night and said, we need a third baseman for there's a bar called Doherty's. It's a hangout bar that I go to in Palm Beach. They said, well, we need this third baseman who's sick. And I said, well, sure, I'll go out. I figured I'd get a game under my belt before I came west. And dumb me, slid into second. Last out, last inning, bam. And there it went. It was real freaky accident. I don't think it could have happened any other. It was just one of those things.
How do people react when do they cart you on stage?
No, I've got crutches down pretty good now. You know, for the first, I decided just to go ahead and work because I couldn't do anything. I'd never broken any bones before, so I'd gone crazy sitting around. I had done it for 2 weeks, so I figured at least working, I could keep my mind occupied and the time would go faster, which it did. So I just walk up there and I sit part of the time, and then I managed to get crutch, rock and roll in pretty well. I can stand and sit either way.
Did you do it in the middle of the tour, or was it before the tour started?
It was before this tour started. We were. God, I did it May the 1st, and we were ready. We were going to work, so all my off time was like spent in a damn cast. And well, I was supposed to go up to do Saturday Night Live, and then I wanted to do it real bad, so I went ahead and did it. And then I came out here and checked with the doctor out here, and at that point, after 2 weeks, it had slipped, so I had to get it reset. So that was fun. But it's I feel like a short term in prison. I've only got three. I'm on the last 3 weeks on it.
What does this do to your softball career? I mean, are you out for the season?
I'm out. Yes, that's it. I'm out for the season. Maybe I'll get a little bit in toward the end of the season, But the Coral Reefer team's still playing, but I'm actively coaching from third. But see, we have our grudge. The rubber match of the game. The Eagles have won 2 and we won 2, so we have this big game pending. So I want to be back in shape for that one.
Any truth to the rumors that you were receiving professional coaching for the Eagles Rolling Stone game?
I don't. There are a lot of rumors flying here, and Rolling Stone were such bad losers. See, and I was in New York, and Jan Winter was trying to ask these questions of ringers and such. I didn't know. See, I was sort of treading the line since I'm now writing for Outside, so that I didn't know which team I was on, really. So I was sort of a borderline case there. But I think that they definitely wanted to win the game.
Do you have a column in Outside?
I did an article. It's out in July. It comes out in a couple of weeks. I got copies today. It's in the July-August issue. It's like a double issue. I did it on. It's a sailing piece. It's the first piece of journalism I've done. I finally used my degree.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. You didn't, when you were a young teener, didn't intend to make music your career.
No, I was going to be a writer. So now I did. I sent my mother a copy, and I just signed it. And I said, "See, I finally used my degree. Thanks a lot." Oh, but I had I've always wanted to do that. That's really been, something that I've always really definitely wanted to get into. So there was an opportunity. It was great working with Terry McDonald, who's the editor of Outside. It was really a learning experience, because I'd never been involved with an editor, or anything like that. I wrote 27 pages, and it was a 3,000-word article, so we really had to slice. But it's and a friend of mine, Tom Corcoran, who does all the pictures for the albums, got some incredibly good racing pictures. It was a whole week of racing down in Antigua, and so it's out, and I was really pleased with it. I worked real hard on it.
You need to do more of this?
I think so. I've got time now since we're not on the road as much as we don't have to work 280 days a year anymore. So we're still touring, but then it's something I've always wanted to get into, and it's nice. I was hoping this one did well, so then they could send me to some exotic place, and foot the bill so I could go write about it, So I'm definitely hoping to do some more. I've had some other offers to do it, but I wanted to wait and see how this thing came out, and it really came out nice. I was really pleased with it. So we'll do something else.
We look forward to reading it.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been a sailor all your life?
Basically, because I grew up in Mobile, in Alabama, and I was always on the water as a kid. Not in big boats, but we were always out in some kind of boat. So, and then finally, when time was right and everything was working out, the first thing I ever wanted to do was buy a nice boat. I'd worked on a lot of boats for other people, but I really wanted to own one bad.
What kind of work were you doing on this boat?
Just crewing, deliveries. There'll be boats that people buy and they have to be moved from, say, Florida down to the Caribbean. There's always a steady flow of traffic, so there was always work there. But, you'd get on, and I'd go to boat shows and just drool over this. Ooh. And then I don't have to do that anymore.
You do that every year.
Oh, yeah. They're just incredible. You go out there and you just go, God, But
Well, tell me about the Euphoria.
the U-2 is, she's a 48-foot ketch built in Hong Kong. And clipper bow. It's a classic old boat. And we had her down, and we took her. I've had her just about a year, and we just took her in and cheeseburgered her up a little bit. I mean, she's a great sailing boat, but I'm too spoiled by living on the road. And we air conditioned her, put refrigerators, freezers on board, a Betamax microwave oven, Nakamichi sound systems throughout the boat. But still, she's it's nice because she's very, very comfortable boat, and a strong, good sailing boat. We left. I left the boat in Antigua after that race week, and the captain, who's been a friend of mine for years, took her up to Martha's Vineyard for the summer. So that's where she is. I'm going back up there for the holidays and for 4th of July and spend some time up there before we go back to work.
So you have visitation rights?
Yeah. Oh yes. I can drive now. I don't. Fortunately, I can do nothing. That's her. Yeah, she's on the back of the album. That was the picture on the back of the album was taken off of Key West. That was the maiden voyage. It was on Thanksgiving Day we took those pictures. Yeah.
She must have power in there, though.
Oh, yeah.
On all that equipment you got.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's I got a big generator on board, too, and then an engine also. But I miss her very badly now. I'm ready to go back.
That's beautiful. Was there a Euphoria 1 that you had?
Yeah, there was a Euphoria 1. She was small, about 33 feet.
What happened to her?
I traded her in on Euphoria, too. So
That might be a tragic story.
No tragic stories. It was funny. We were out, and somebody called. We were cruising through the Bahamas on the little boat. This is a couple of years ago, and we got a call, and somebody said, "Are you okay?" And it's like this frantic emergency phone call. I said, we'd been, out in the bar in Stanley Key Yacht Club one night, drinking a couple of beers. And we said, "Sure, we're fine," a headache. But they said, "Well, we heard that you'd gone down." And I went, "What?" They said, "Oh, yes." They said there was another boat named Euphoria, or a close facsimile, and somebody heard it on the radio. And a lot of people thought we'd sunk on our first voyage, and we were just cruising around. But, you get down there, and communications are one thing that are hard to do. Lose touch real fast.
When I was in Nassau a couple of weeks ago on the radio, they'd be saying, "Will the vessel blah blah contact Nassau Harbor?"
Oh yeah, it's
constantly all the time.
Well, it's you get in there and it's just that's the way it's done down there. It's a fact of that's the communications is done that way. There's not much. Did you get to watch TV in Nassau? Did you watch the Nassau TV station?
Yeah, the one that's on for 3 hours a day.
The 3 hour a day?
With cartoons.
Yeah, they're great. I like the news. The news is good.
Yeah.
And the sportscaster. He's great.
So your grandpa was a sea captain?
Yeah, he was an old sailing ship man. He was originally from Nova Scotia. And I don't know how he settled in Mississippi. I never did bother. I never found out how he got down there. That's one thing I always wanted to ask him before he died. But it was... He went to sea for years. He was a great old man. He retired. He went into steamships. He retired when I guess 65 then. And still, after that, he worked for other people. He just went sailing and, just to get out locally. But, he was great.
So that's where the name of the album comes from?
Yeah, and then my father was a sailor also. He's a naval architect, but, we were always sailing, so... It was a real natural thing. I came up with it one day. I don't know. I forget how I came up with the title, but it just fit at that point. I went, yeah, that sounds real nice. And my brother-in-law had given me a line, so in the song "Son of a Son." So he gave it to me for no charge, and so it sort of fit what I was working on at the time, and that's how the whole thing gelled. And I figured that apropos to name the album that.
You've written several other songs about him. Sounds like to me.
Yeah, the Captain and the Kid, definitely. And there's a couple other references in other songs. He was just a great sense of humor, and he'd been everywhere. Ran away from home when he was 13 in Nova Scotia and didn't go back till he was 85, And, spoke 7 languages, and he'd been everywhere.
Wasn't it that tune, The Captain and the Kid, that made you decide to... Let's talk about your early days when you went to Nashville.
Yeah.
To become a country singer, right?
No, I didn't go to become a country singer. I went because I didn't have enough money to buy gas to get to California. That's the truth. I ran out of money in Kansas City. I was in a 65 Ford convertible, and I'd had an offer this is years ago, from Johnny Rivers' publishing company at that time. I had heard some tapes, and I also had an offer from Buzz Cason in Nashville, and so I really didn't know. I'd never been to Nashville before, and most of the music I always listened to growing up in Mobile came out of New Orleans, and it was all R&B, and that's where I did my first. When I was in school, I played in bands in New Orleans, so it's all like early, black New Orleans music, which I still is my favorite.
Oh yeah,
I like
the
Cajun music.
Meters and all those guys.
Never got into because that's more like New Orleans was such a separate entity. It was more jazz and rhythm and blues, but Cajun is more like West, Lafayette around Acadia, and that it really doesn't overstep the boundaries down there that much. You get out of New Orleans is in the city itself, and then definitely you're in that. But I didn't listen to much of that at all. No, I listened to all black R&B.
Yeah, because Cajun's really. I was in New Orleans once, and they used to have a Cajun talent show or something.
Oh yeah, well they have those down there. Yeah, and it gets weird, but I never. That's what I thought it was. Then it was weird, but But early listening, that's all I did was listen to that. I really wasn't in tune that much to country music, but it was a job. I had an offer, so I went. And I didn't want to go to New York. I didn't want to live in New York at that time, and I really wanted to come out here, but it was a long way across, and I didn't have any money, so Nashville was closer, and so I went there. That's really the way. And then once I was there, I just started to work and got into it, because I always considered, and I still did from the early days, considered it a good rock and roll band more than anything else. But you get stereotyped very early, and the thing of it was, I think the early successes, or any like small successes with it. First thing out was Great Filling Station Hold Up, which was a very sort of country record. And then Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw? Well, there I was, and then I'd go, well, He Went to Paris is on that album. Why don't you listen to those too? So, but they didn't. So, I stayed there a couple of years, and then packed it up and went back to Florida.
Were you primarily writing or performing?
I was writing. I couldn't get any work. There was no place to work, and I had been working, in college and in bands all through school, and then had gone out on the road to work the old fabulous Holiday Inn cocktail lounge circuit for a summer to pay off my college loans, and but when I got to Nashville, that was the one thing that I couldn't get work as a performer. There was no place to do it. Even, I was, I'd audition and for cocktail lounge, cocktail hour gigs, and at that point there were no clubs or anything in Nashville for performing, which was sort of frustrating because I was used to working. So I went to work for Billboard for a year. I wrote for Billboard magazine for a year.
So this article on Outside is really not your first.
Well, I consider it my first really good, long journalistic piece.
What were you writing for Billboard?
I did. I worked for a great old man named Bill Williams, who was the Southern editor, who was just like the last of the old school sort of. He reminds me of like Lou Grant,
Mm-hmm.
that he was that man. I learned a tremendous amount from him. He was a marvelous old man, and he just took me under his wing. He didn't have to hire me, but he knew, And I was doing Vietnam moratoriums and wearing black armbands, and the rest of the office would throw stuff at me, but he understood, It's just so I was writing just like pop columns for I was trying to get my crusade at the time was to make people aware that there was more going on and happening in Nashville than just basic country music, which there was and still is, and also in like Macon and other. This was before the emergence of Southern rock or whatever, but I was doing reviews and it was just Bill knew that it was just an interim thing. I was just waiting to get some kind of a deal going. So I wrote for about a year, and then when the first album came out, I quit.
That was on Barnaby?
Yeah.
How'd you run into Andy Williams?
I've never met Andy Williams. I ran into his record company.
Who signed you to that? Was a guy named Ken...
Ken Mansfield had... No, this is pre-Ken Mansfield. A guy named Mike Shepard signed me in Nashville. Ray Stevens was on the label then, and that was when Everything Is Beautiful was the big hit. And I did. Well, I signed to Buzz Cason, who I'd gone to Nashville to work for. And it was like a production deal. And Barnaby bought the masters of the fabulous Down to Earth album, which was...
Is that the album where you said that it wasn't that good, but neither was the promotion?
Yeah. they buried it because that's what. Well, the cover was I was in this car buried in the mountainside. I said not only did I bury myself, but the record company CBS buried me in the bottom of their stacks. So I hit it off immediately with the record company right away. By opening my big mouth.
Was there only one album on that?
No, there were two. I did another one, and they didn't put it out at the time. So then that's when I left.
Is that where the master was?
The master was mysteriously missing? Yes, it surfaced later, and it came out. As a matter of fact, it came out about the time that the Changes album came out.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Did you find it amusing?
Almost as amusing when I found out that the Rancho Deluxe album had come out, and nobody had told me it was coming out. There was some real, dealing with the old record companies.
It was called Cumberland, something Cumberland.
High Cumberland Jubilee. And people, I've seen it, and if you look at the cover, I mean, people will not believe that it's my picture on the cover, because that was in my real debauch. I weighed 175 pounds, and I was doing nothing to do. And it was funny because they released that thing, and it was almost a 7-year-old album that came out at the same time that Changes came out. So it was a pretty good perspective. I sat down and listened to them both. And and I thought, well, I have progressed. But
Kind of like finding a scrapbook.
Yeah, fortunately though, a lot of people get strapped with that. That's one thing I still to this day when we record, I don't believe anything in the can, because it can come back to haunt you. A lot of artists get stuck with leaving 9 or 10 albums for somebody that just go in and cut, and then they'll just repackage. Well.
We're getting leakage in here from someplace.
It's from us. It's monitors feeding in.
Yeah, it's a monitor feed.
So,
watch
our lips.
Round about what year was it that you were in Nashville during the Billboard thing?
I got out of school in '69, so it was late 1969. Then I moved up there and stayed through '70. I left late '70. For Key West, about a year and a half.
Now, is it true that you were playing the Captain and the Kid for somebody, and the guy suggested you change?
Absolutely, that's the truth.
Tell us that story.
Because see, I was writing, but I couldn't go in and plug songs. There's to me that I was never a salesman. I never wanted to be, and that to me epitomized like being a salesman. But at times I try to get. Because that's what I was trying to do. So I couldn't get any work performing, so I was trying to get some songs plugged, which I never did ever get anybody to record any of my songs in Nashville. And I went into, I know the guy's name, but I won't say it. But he was an executive at, I think, United Artists at that time in Nashville. And I went in and I had 2 things, and Captain and the Kid was one of them. Because I'd written it. My grandfather died the year I was in Nashville. And that's when I wrote it. I'd gone back to Mississippi to the funeral and came back up. And it was still a very tender song to me at that point because I was really, admired and loved my grandfather very much. So at that point it was... And I went in finally, and I knew that it was one of the best things I had at the time. So finally I went into this office to plug this song. And the guy listened to the first tape. I don't even forget what the first song was, but they give it to you, it's like they listen to about 10 seconds, then 20 seconds in the middle. Then he went on to the next cut. So he listened to Captain the Kid, and he didn't cut it off. And he listened to the whole song. And he turned around and he cut it off, and he said, "That's not bad, but the old man shouldn't die in the end." And I just went, "What?" And I knew that there was no way he could understand, there was no, I wasn't going to try to explain my emotions. I just picked it up and walked out, and I never went back and plugged the song. And that's when I started looking south. I said, this is not, time, this is not where they don't appreciate this stuff here. So that's when I started packing my bags and looking at the warm weather in Florida.
Yeah, there's a story I read about you, which reminded me of my 19th summer. It was summer when I had a big baggy coat and wore baggy clothes and would go into the grocery store and find food.
Oh yes. Oh, find food. It grows there.
Yes. Was that Peanut Butter Conspiracy? Was that the one?
Yeah,
it was a group called Peanut Butter Conspiracy.
There was. Well, see, the original title of that song was "Who's Gonna Steal the Peanut Butter?" That was, and then some label copy mix-up that came out as Peanut Butter Conspiracy or some dumb thing. And I tried to get it changed, and then nothing would happen in those days. Well, it's too much time. You know, we have to press on.
So you were doing that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I was very good at it. I had a friend who was my bass player at the time. He was from Toronto and weighed about, he was a former football player, so he was about 6'1" and weighed about 235. And I was real skinny at the time, so he'd just sort of literally run interference, you know, and he'd check it, and I'd walk behind him and just, oh, we lived very well. I mean, it got to the point where, you know, if we needed to eat, we were living in Biloxi on the beach at the time working, and we'd go down and get a six-pack of Old Milwaukee for 99 cents, and then down to the Winn-Dixie and just pick up a nice steak, go home and charcoal it up. It worked. We were on the bus, and we were working down south once and came back through Hattiesburg, and where I went to school, and that's where all this occurred. And so we were up on the bus all night roaring. It was about 4 in the morning. They said we should make a pilgrimage to the original Mini Mart. And I thought, my God, I said, we were going to do it, and then we got real close, and I chickened out about 4 blocks away. I said, we can't pull a 40-foot bus up with a palm tree painted on the side in a town in Mississippi at 4 in the morning and not think that people are going to see us, and then unload 12 screaming maniacs in front of a Mini Mart. I said, it'll all come back to haunt me, and they'll throw us all in jail and take my bus until I pay them back. So we passed it by and went on to New Orleans.
What was your technique? Did you have a... See, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I really did this.
Well, you know what I'd do is I would take a cart, and then I'd go in like an ordinary shopper, you know, a very respectful shopper, and I'd fill the cart up, and then I'd watch for the mirrors and check out where the mirror angles were. And then there were certain little aisles, and on turns, I'd take the cart, and then I'd put things that I wanted from the cart. I'd put them up in the little top basket, and I had a trench coat on that I'd slit out to, you know, and so then anything I wanted, I'd just right out of the top of the cart. Then I would leave the cart and take like $1.20 worth of goods and go check out through the counter and just, you know, talk real Southern and strike up a conversation with the checkout lady, you know, and they knew us, you know. And then I started feeling guilty about it, you know. But then I didn't because I knew it wasn't theirs. You know? But that was one technique. And then the interference that Ricky would run was the other. And then, you know, there were certain things that you knew would fit, like cheese and ham would go right in your back pocket. Plum roast Danish ham, you know, fit right in the back pocket of a pair of jeans. And sunglasses, sunglasses. You could just, you know. Oh, these look very nice. Pop that tag off and walk out with them.
You were getting switching the price labels?
Oh, yeah, I did that too. Yeah.
13 cents for this.
Yeah. But then I figured, this is ridiculous. I might as well get caught stealing instead of price switching. But that was, you know, there were items that you took, and then you get real risky. You know, you get real bold. You know, we would go back and we'd have them cut us a steak. You know, not a packaged one out of the freezer. We'd have a, you know, huge tenderloin or something, just to see if we could get out with it, and we did. You know, like a tenderloin. We'd gotten chickens. I mean, I've taken whole chickens out of the store before, just with the trench coat and sucking in my stomach and a big shirt, oversized clothing always with shirts hanging out, and you know, a pair of jeans that are 2 inches too big for your waist. They hold a lot.
Did you ever get caught?
Never.
Amazing.
Never got caught. Close once in Florida because we were on one of those late night, let's go to Florida, and then you get there and you have no money kind of binges. And all in Cocoa Beach, Florida, they almost got us, but we were out of the store and then back in the car. But we were real rampant. I mean, it was just obvious that we were just stealing them blind. We were going for towels and suntan lotion and things like that. You know, we were going to the beach. But it was, you know, survival. So
what happened when you left Nashville with your 2 hit albums?
With my 2 hit albums and the 384 copies sold. I packed it up and went to Miami. I'd worked down there at a little club called The Flick, which a lot of people had worked at, and it was a good little club down in Miami. A lot of people had played down there in the earlier days, and ran into Jerry Jeff down there. I'd known Jerry Jeff before. And it was November, and it was, you know, I'd missed being by the ocean. You know, you grow up by the water, you just, it's just something, and the weather in Nashville is just really terribly bleak in the winter. I mean, it's just gray and rainy, and it's not, you know, you don't get snow, or you don't get, you know, it can be 80 one day and 20 the next. You know, it's just that you never know kind of weather.
Is this around the time that Jerry Jeff gave you a piece of advice?
Which piece of advice is this?
It's okay to be weird.
Yeah. Follow your weird. That's what he told me.
How'd that come about?
Well, he was in town sometime, and he had gotten my phone disconnected by screaming at the operator or something, and he was justifying it at the time. And he told me anytime, and then I called him up and said I was on my way down, and I got to Florida, and I didn't have the gig. When I got there, the guy had given my job away. So Jerry Jeff took me in, and just, I had no money or anything. I was planning on this, and I got there, and you can imagine, I'd flown down on a hot TWA credit card or something that I'd had, student fare card, and got down there, and the guy had given the booking to somebody else, and I went, oh Lord, this is just my luck. But I stayed with Jerry Jeff for about 2 weeks. He put me up, and then I worked. And I started working about 2 weeks later than that, and stayed in Coconut Grove for about a couple of months. And then one day I just said, I went into Jerry Jeff and his lady at the time. I said, I've never been to Key West, and I said, I don't want to overstay my welcome here. I think I'm gonna hitchhike on down there and take a look at it. And they said, well, hell, let's just go, And his lady at the time, Murphy, had lived in Key West, and they'd spent some time down there. So we just went and did the laundry, made a big pitcher of sangria, and next thing I knew, we were on our way down there, and it was November. Got there on this crazy weekend. It's like it's a big offshore powerboat race. And it was like, it's 85 degrees, and the water was crystal clear, and there's cold beer, and just this good time, and I just did not want to come back. I just said, that's it. So I called my ex-wife and said, just send me my stool and my roll-top desk, and you keep the rest of it, and I'll see you later. And I stayed, and then I just, stayed there and just had a great time.
Is this sort of the time of the birth of the Jimmy Buffett we all know and love today?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think it was I was back on track. When I got married and moved to Nashville, I think I just got a little off track there. I did that just because I'd lived in New Orleans, and just by the time I was 21, I'd just been just roaring away, and I said, well, I've got to slow down. I can't, I didn't think I'd ever see 30 at that point. So I figured, well, I need to put a little order to my life, so I'll get married here and try to make an honest man of myself. Well, that lasted about a year and 8 months. And so when I got back to Key West, I got back to feeling I was back comfortable living where I was living, and we settled up. My ex-wife and I, we get along very well, so it's just a point where we just went, look, this isn't working out here like we thought it was. And so everything was, there weren't very many traumas in my life, so I was having a great time, just fishing and working. And by that time, the little club that I'd worked, I was starting to get a following in Miami, so I could get steady work there. And I'd just go to Miami and work on weekends, and then I'd work in Key West, and during the week, I had a little job at nights.
Did you get rediscovered around this time?
By
As far as
ABC.
By ABC?
Yeah, well, it's still in that time that I was still trying to get on a label deal, and my manager at the time was in Nashville. A friend named Don Light was my manager then. So we were still trying and being turned down by everybody. And I was still writing and sending tapes up. And one day he called up and he said, ABC is opening an office in Nashville, and they're real interested in this stuff. And so I sent him some other demos that I'd done. And then he called back and said, Don Gant wants to sign you. And I said, what kind of terms are they talking about? I said, what are we going to make? He said, well, they want to give you $25,000. And I went, $25,000? And I said, boy, I started figuring up. I said, I can do this album for about $7,000. And it'll take me 3.5 days, and I can invest the rest of it in a boat, which I can make a run to Colombia, and I can pick up about 40 tons, clear about $200,000, and retire. That was my whole premise at the time. And the next thing I knew, I was working the bottom line. So my fantasies of becoming a scammer were gone. But that's the way it really happened. I went up and we did the album in 3 days. I called all these friends of mine in, and I'd never met my producer. I didn't even know Don Gant that well at the time, and I must have really weirded him out, because I called in really good musicians, but nobody that was, he was used to working with Nashville studio formula kind of musicians, and I brought in these funky guys from Memphis and a couple from New Orleans, and Fingers, my harp player, and so we did the album. Then it started getting some recognition. It didn't sell well, but it got a lot of critical
Tell us the
recognition.
name of that.
White sport coat and a pink crustacean. Yeah.
Did you really do it for $7,000? Did you make it for 7,000?
Oh yeah, we did it. We brought it in for that, and then, but I never. The boat sort of got lost at that point. The next thing I knew, I was in. No, I worked Max's Kansas City. That was the first gig. A friend of mine, Corb Donahue, called up. He worked for ABC then, and he called me up and he said, "You don't know me, but I heard this record that you did." And he said, "I can understand your lifestyle, and I just wanted to know if you really want to do this." And he met me in New York, and we went up and did like Max. I opened for Andy Pratt at Max's Kansas City. That was the first gig, and then I really honestly started. You know, this was an opportunity to work again and what I really wanted to do. So it was. Then I started getting some club dates, and you know they got me some bookings and all. So then I was back to work.
Was that the album your first single came? Come Monday, I think?
Come Monday was off of Living and Dying in 3/4 Time. But the album never sold. That was the strange thing about it. Come Monday was a pretty good hit. It, went top 20, but the album didn't sell. Then that was strange, because I thought it would at the time, and then it just sort of faded. Then A1A really was like that was a good album.
Is
good
that when
time.
you switched producers? A1A?
No, I didn't switch producers until Changes. It was coming to a head, because by then we were getting to know each other, and I was starting to. At this point, still, I was working by myself on the road. So there was no conflict as far. The conflict came when I put my band together, because the way Don, he was a very systemized record producer and used to the way records are done in Nashville. And it's, if you don't get 3 tracks a day, then something's wrong. And I'm not one to spend 9 months in the studio. I mean, we still get all of our albums done, and I go in with everything done. So it takes me a month, maybe 2 months to do an album. Totally. So, but it got to the point where I couldn't. Once I had the band together, on Havana Daydreaming was the first one I wanted to use the band, and it got some friction in the studio, because I was using my band, and it was obvious he was not pleased, and so it sort of came to the head. I just couldn't tell the guys that had been with me for 9 months on the road that they weren't good enough to go into a studio,
These are the Coral Reefers.
Yeah, and they were young at this time, and we were all inexperienced. But hell, I'd much rather go with inexperience and try something new and innovative than stay stoic and. So that's when I decided. And Norbert I'd known and liked some of the work he'd done, and I knew he lived in Nashville, and he was just a little more in tune with what we were going to do. So we went, and I wanted to get out of Nashville to record, so I wanted to go to Florida. We went to Criteria and did it at Criteria, and the band was still sort of, everybody. It wasn't as tight as it is now. We still had some spots and some, that I wanted to really tighten up, and then after Kenny Buttrey came down to work with us on Changes, I had a drummer named Michael Gardner who was good, but boy, once I heard Buttrey, I just went, wow, I said, if I could ever get this guy to go on the road. So he came down and had a good time doing Changes, and I asked him, and after we did that, I said, if he hadn't been on the road since he'd worked with Neil Young, and I said, let's just try this. I said, if you have a good time, if you're having a good time, we're going to do this 3-week tour and see if you'd like to come out. So he's been with me for a year. So we went in to do Son of a Son. It was like confidence was there, the band was solid, so it was just this real positive kind of thing going for that.
You recorded this one in Coconut Grove.
Did it at Bill Zimzik's studio down there in Bayshore.
Bayshore.
Yeah.
Tell us about the birth of the Coral Reefer Band. Weren't they they were fictitious for a while?
They were totally fictitious for a while. It was I came up with the name, there was a boat in Key West. There was an old shrimp boat called the Coral Reef. And it had gotten popped on a run. So I thought, well, and I said something. I said, well, hell, I should have called it the Coral Reefer. And then I went, So I did. I just sort of made up this imaginary band. And it was just part of the act. It was funny, and people got off on it. So there was never any doubt in what I would call the real band when I could get one together. So that's basically how it all started. Yeah, I had the Reeferettes. And I'd introduce the whole band, and it was, it'd take 10 minutes to do, and people would look at me like, God, this guy's nuts. I'd have a ball doing it, because I was working in those days, it'd be coffee houses where they serve no liquor, and I had a bottle of Seagram 7 stashed behind the stage. I should sit there, and it's obvious. It's, 3 shows a night by the third show. The old troubadour days, too.
Keep It in Second Wind.
Oh, yeah. That was
That's my favorite song of yours.
Really? Well, that was Memorial Night at the Troubadour. Those the old basic 3 shows on the weekend. Whew. It was one of those days. That's where Kick It In came from.
Excuse me.
Go right ahead.
Did you spend time in where'd you run into Stevie Goodman and Prine and those
I
guys?
spent a lot of time working in Chicago in the early days. Chicago's like one of the first major cities I'd worked at of the South. And I worked a quiet night for Richard Harding up there. And Stevie and Prime were sort of like, that was when they were in the Discovery days, and they were working the Earl of Old Town. So I had a ball up there and met a lot of really good friends. And I worked in Chicago quite a bit.
And you wrote a great song with Stevie about television.
Oh, the Monty, yeah, we wrote that in his apartment. I had the idea, the title, and we just sat down one day at his house, and then it just sort of evolved. It was great because it got to the point we wrote the song, and then he kept the verse in there was one verse that I wanted to do my way, and he wanted to do his way, so that when he recorded it, he did his, and I did mine. So it takes off, and there's 2 totally different versions, but it's great to be able to do it that way. He's a dear friend. I mean, it's one of the highlights of my life was meeting Stevie Goodman and becoming good friends with him. He's just a treat.
Yeah, I saw him a couple weeks ago. He was out here for Prime was at the.
I missed him in San Francisco up there.
Did you?
Yeah, I was up in there.
He sang a couple tunes with John. It was good.
And he produced that album on which I really liked.
Mhm.
I liked that new album.
It is a good album.
Yeah, well, that was fun in Chicago in those days. It really was. And I finally got to build a good following up there, and I'd always look forward to going to Chicago. It was a real treat to go up there.
What year more or less was that?
Oh, it was early 70s. This is after I was living in Key West, and I'd commute because it was just me, and I could fly. I'd work on weekends. I'd fly because I could go to Miami and get a flight. I had no expenses, no band, no wife, no anything. So I was getting by okay. What I made, I spent, but I had a good time.
Are you living in Aspen now?
I've got a house up there. Yeah, my wife stays there most of the time. I get there occasionally. We refer to it as the house my wife lives in. But I get up there in the summer. But ever since I got this new boat, it's just when I get my time off, I enjoy it. We go to the boat, but when I'm on the road, she stays there because she likes it. And it's outside, but it's about 15 miles out of Aspen.
One place is so landlocked, and the other place is water.
Yeah, well, I'm not a very basically cold weather person, but I like to ski, and I'll go up for Christmas and spend some time up there. But it's usually once you finish a tour like this, the nicest thing for me is to get on that boat and throw the lines off, and then you're just out there floating for a while. It's a great way to come down and get back in shape, and get healthy again. So I just found myself most of the year when we were not touring going back to the boat. We spent most of the time down island. But I like it in the summer out there. It's nice. It's nice to have a piece of property, though. I feel like Ben Cartwright, I'd never owned anything. I figured I had to start getting responsible here.
Yeah, it's comfortable. Mary's just buying a house, so she'll have that feeling.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a beautiful house up there. And I went out one day, and after the whole thing was signed, and it's it's like 3 acres and has a river running through it. And I did. And I went out, I said, God, I feel like Ponderosa out here. I've never owned anything. It's a good feeling.
Is yours near Henley's?
It's close, yeah. It's right next door to Fry's.
Oh. Well, you can keep practicing softball. So.
Yeah, we yell insults across our property lines.
I have Fields and McCoys.
Oh, yeah. That's what I told him when he moved in. I said, next thing you know, here comes this kid from Michigan moving in next to my state. There'll be cars on cinder blocks. So, but it's fun. Yeah.
There's a whole new breed of pirates in the Caribbean. Like, these people wind up in your song, these characters?
Yeah, I think that there always have been pirates, and once I started, the Caribbean has always fascinated me. So, and I've read a lot of books, and I like to keep up with local history, because once you go to each island, and they're like a lot of local good. They're not very well written, but they're pretty factual, and then there's a lot of facts and a lot of fantasy involved in them. But throughout all the readings, it's always been an area for rogues and scoundrels. I think it's just that the merchandise that they're dealing in, the contraband changes. For years it was Spanish gold that they were plundering. Then came Prohibition. It was rum, and now it's drugs. And I think that it's just, it'll whatever's next. I don't know, But it's always had a history of being that kind of an area, and very volatile and very romantic area. And there definitely is that. They're pirates of a new, pirates that drive 450 SLs.
Are they romantics though?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cops and robbers game. The ones that I know. There are some very nasty people down there as well, which I think you find anywhere. But there are also some. I just like it because you can go in to any island, and there's always, you have the sense of anybody you're talking to in a bar or that's older and is talking with a New York accent or something, is running from something, and you meet a lot of interesting characters that used to be stockbrokers or something and hit the bottle too, then left to the islands. And it's just that kind of mystique that I like. I enjoy meeting people like that, and it's fun, and they give me a lot of good ideas for songs too.
Yeah, they must. What kind of person is attracted to that kind of life with you? Found any common threads that seem to run through?
I think you have to be a romantic to enjoy it, and it's fun. It's like, for years we'd work and we'd only work coastal areas, and I was sort of spoiled. I wouldn't go to the Midwest. I didn't know whether anybody would enjoy the music there. I'd think, wow, what do they have in common? Then I was wrong, because when we did Irving made me go. And we got there and we sold out. And people were just as enthusiastic because when we first started, our pockets were mainly the South and the Northwest, Washington, Oregon. And then it sort of grew in California after that. So I was working the coastal areas, and then we went to the Midwest, and I thought, it's the same thing. It's why most of the people that join the Navy come from Iowa and landlocked states, because it's that sort of fascination with something distant. And I think it's that kind of appeal. Still, if you can't enjoy this lifestyle, at least you can sit down at night. If you have to be in Buffalo, you can light up a number and sit there and hear squalls out on the Gulf Stream and dream about it for a little while. I think that's probably the real catch of it. And the people that are down there, it's the same. I was more recognized on boats before I was ever recognized in the country, because everybody that had a boat had a Buffett tape, and I didn't realize that. And I started getting recognized down the island way before I had any success here, which I liked. I enjoyed that because I could get good gas dock privileges, and I'd barter. I'd do a lot of barter.
Let me ask you: have you ever gone looking for buried treasure down there?
I've gone. I know some friends that in Key West. They did a National Geographic special on treasure salvage down there, which is fascinating to me. And I went out one time on that wreck, on that site, and did some diving.
When you were a kid, were you reading the exploits of Jean Lafitte?
Oh yeah, Jean Lafitte was my hero. I put together the Black Falcon, which was his boat. I had a model of the Black Falcon. Jean Lafitte was my hero.
Let me ask you about one other childhood.
That's interesting. Most people would know who Jean Lafitte was.
Every island, I think, in the Gulf is where Jean Lafitte's treasure is supposed to be buried.
Yeah. Well, it's I think it's probably, I don't know where it is, but no, I never went in those days. What I would do is, because Mobile on the bay, and my grandfather told me this during World War II. The Germans would just literally sit. We were not. I wasn't born yet, so I wasn't privileged to the information. But the people who fought the big one, they'd sit out there and just knock off freighters at the mouth of Mobile Bay. The Germans had total control of the Gulf of Mexico. Nobody ever knew this. And my grandfather told me once that he was tracked. This is before the war broke out. He was on a run from New Orleans to Rio de Janeiro, and the submarine just went with them step by step the whole way down there. And they would sink submarines. And there's one, I did dive on those when I was a kid, because I did get into scuba diving like in high school. And there's an old German submarine sunk right in the bay, and a lot of torpedo tankers out there. And that was sort of, because I never thought of that. I think, wait a minute, this didn't, and it did. And then later, not reading history now, there was read some histories of the U-boat campaigns. There was some intense, after the Germans knew that it was about to go, then they crossed the Atlantic and just started hitting them. They'd sink submarines and find sailors washed up with Sanger theater tickets from Mobile in their pockets, And there was a heavy German concentration, settlement down on the Alabama coast near Gulf shores. And so apparently a lot of espionage was going on down there. Real sort of interesting stuff.
Wow.
And so that I dove on those kind of records. Treasure, it's fascinating to see it. Boy, I've gone in sometimes to Treasure Salvage, and they'll go, well, here the suitcase open up, and it'll be like just pieces of 8, and you just run, and you go, it is, it just has a fascination to it. And this gold chain that they found, oh, it's just some incredible stuff.
Another childhood hero, it really freaked me when I read this, Glenn Miller. No, it wasn't Glenn Miller, excuse me, it was Mitch Miller.
Mitch Miller. I used to like that TV show. Mitch Miller and Spike Jones. Spike Jones I loved.
I can see Spike Jones.
But I just liked to sing. I would sing along with Mitch. I don't think it was abnormal. Everybody did, but I just liked to sing those old songs. And remember that's, oh yeah. And they'd all walk out there in the end, and I'd just be sitting there singing away.
He was so wooden though. He would go.
Oh yeah. But it was, and everybody was. It was like, but they looked like they were having a good time. I'm sure they had a little nip before they went on. They all looked very rosy cheeked, if I remember correctly.
Even on black and white.
Yeah.
Oh, true. Let's talk about some of your hits.
Oh, there's 3 of them.
One.
Okay.
Is there a story about Cheeseburger?
Yeah, Cheeseburger. I've caught a lot of flack for Cheeseburger because a lot of people, think it's a contrived sort of commercial song. But it's totally written from the heart. It was. We'd been at sea for about 5 days and coming into Tortola in the British Virgins, and there's one thing that's universally you can find, boy, it's cold beer, cheeseburger, and pot. You can find anywhere, just about under any circumstance in the Western Hemisphere. And so we had been out, and we were down to chunky chicken soup. Ice had melted, the beer was hot, So it's just everybody's waiting to see land. And we pulled into Tortola to the Village Key Marina, and it probably wasn't the best cheeseburger I've ever had, but boy, it's the first one I had seen, and with the cold Budweiser, and it just inspired me at that point, And there I sat eating the burger, and we'd finally made it. The palm trees were blowing, and we were in the trade winds, and there it was. I just thought cheeseburger in paradise. I wanted to write it first person to begin with, as me being the cheeseburger in paradise, but then I wrote it from the hunger standpoint. But that's how that came about, yeah.
I remember pulling into a place in Big Sur, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cheeseburger. It tasted like, and it was weeks, It was a little roadside cafe. It tasted like it tasted like the best cheeseburger in the world.
Oh yeah.
If I had been in Maxine's in Paris or something.
Yeah, well, cheeseburger is a very American institution. I mean, it's funny because I was reading Herb Cain's column the other day in San Francisco Chronicle or something. I love him. He's a great writer, and he's always on this the never-ending search for the perfect cheeseburger. And he was describing some restaurant he'd eaten at in San Francisco, and he grades them. And it's the same way. I mean, there are times in your life when there's nothing you want more.
Have you been to Fat Burger?
Oh yes, yeah, the Fat Burger. Now that's right up there. And there's a place in New Orleans that serves them on French bread, And oh yeah, I've got I may compile my list of cheeseburgers. I'm on the never-ending search for the perfect cheeseburger.
Okay, how's this for a segue? To wash down that cheeseburger, a margarita.
Okay, did you come up with that? Margaritaville was. I wrote that about Key West mainly because it was. I was sort of reflecting at a time that when I first went there, it was just really, and I wrote a lot of songs about it. And I was just about, I wasn't finding much to write about in Key West at that point. I wasn't spending much time there anymore. Things had changed, and like the funky bars that I'd hung out with now had been torn down and turned into turquoise shops. And there was a huge gay community from Fire Island coming. There'd always been a gay community in Key West, but they were low key and very, and all of a sudden the roaring cosmopolitans came roaring in, and then the land developers from Miami came in, and so there's like this onslaught of different factions were coming in, and the real funky part of the island sort of seemed to be disappearing. So I was dismayed, and I wrote Margaritaville sort of as an observation of Key West at that time, and I was sitting there because there was this bar. I got the thing Margaritaville from a bar in Texas in Austin that has really wonderful frozen margaritas. And we sat there, and that's where I came up with the term, and then I just decided to write it. That's the way I'll come up with something like that, and I'll save it until I get the right moment. And I had the term way before I wrote the song. And seeing Key West at that time, I just sort of wrote it as, just sort of a look at the way it was going at the time.
Do you think this sort of deterioration of Key West maybe had something to do with your becoming a land baron?
I thought so for a while, but then I don't think so. Because I never tried to exploit it. It was it was getting to. It had always been like the same thing with Key West. It had always been it's the end of the world, and people had come there for a long time. I wasn't the first to discover it, and I won't be the last, But it meant so much to me at that time that it was totally a part of my music for damn 3 albums, I guess, from A1A on down. And I love it dearly today. I go back, every now and then, just because I've got good friends, and it's still, it's like New Orleans. I spent time there, and I really, there are places and cities that you have a really warm spot in your heart for. Key West being one of them, but I don't think so. I think it would have naturally come. It's just the fact that it hadn't been discovered at the time, and I wasn't selling enough records at the time. I don't think that there have been that big of a factor in it being discovered. I think that it was found by a lot of other people about the same time, and then it was such an onslaught that people down there they didn't have enough time to take stock and say, hey, we don't need to do it this way. Now they are, and there's some restrictions and some building. I just didn't want to see it turn into Miami Beach, because it's such a great little island, and that's what I was afraid that it was going to do. But I don't think it had. There were a lot of people that came down there that I think were good for the island. I think that if it was diverse in some ways as far as that deterioration, I think it was positive in others. Because like this one couple came up to me once in Louis' backyard and they said, we don't want to bother you, but we just want to thank you. We were living in Buffalo, teaching school, and we decided we'd had enough, and we came down here for vacation, and we liked it so much, I got a job at the hospital. My husband's teaching school, and thank you very much. I mean, to me, that made it, you change somebody's lifestyle like that. But they were much happier. So I think that there's probably as much of that effect as there is. I hope it's more positive in that way, But, I never tried to do to that what certain other people have done to the Rocky Mountains. That's why I don't write mountain songs. I leave those, I may live there occasionally, but I'll stick to what I know best.
What about Livingston Saturday Night? I was looking at the lyrics, and it says the Livingston Saturday Night.
Oh, that song. See, that's an old song. I wrote that for Rancho Deluxe. I wrote that for the movie. And few people knew. I mean, I wanted to redo it. But the reason I put it on the album is we were getting requests on the road. I'd hear people yell it out. And hell, I'd forgotten the lyrics, And I'd done it for the movie, and it had been on the Rancho Deluxe soundtrack album. Then it's been on 3 albums and in 2 movies. Nobody knows that. I just started just reshuffling it all through, It works this time. Here, try this. But when they did FM, they wanted to use, those were the 2 songs they wanted to do. I said, well, this has been in a movie. And they said, well, that's okay. We probably won't use it. And then it was a song that they used. But it was written for a scene in Rancho Deluxe, a bar scene in that movie. And I just say it was a good rock and roll song, and it's like an funky sort of rockabilly song, and I wanted to do it again. And so I just tried to remember the lyrics, and we went in and cut it, and it just really came out nice. So it's 7 years old.
Sounds like being in a movie.
Which one? Oh, Lord.
Tell us where you did that.
What?
The scene. Wasn't it down?
It was down at, which hotel? Ambassador in the Coconut Grove room, yeah. It was, I just like to limit my movie appearances to 1 every 6 years, I think. That's the way, it's been 6 years between those 2. I think they do, I've never seen a disc jockey wear a tie to work. When I first saw it, I thought the concert sequences were good. I think the soundtrack's great. I think the movie's terrible.
Yeah, the critics agree.
Yeah.
Oh, working with, I think it was Frank Terry?
Frank Perry on Rancho Deluxe I liked. Yeah. Rancho Deluxe was a good movie. Now, that's the contrast. And I worked with a lot of good people in that movie. And it was the first time, because I'd never done anything like that before. So the way I wrote the soundtrack is, McGuane called me and said, he brought the screenplay over to me in Key West one day. He said, I'm going to do this, and Frank Perry's going to direct it. I'd like for you to do the music. We can work it out. I said, hell, I'd love to. I read it, and I wrote the theme song, Rancho Deluxe, and Livingston Saturday Night before they ever did the movie. I wrote it from the screenplay. But I'd been to Montana, and I knew the bar that we filmed it in. and I knew Livingston because Tom lived up there, and I'd been visiting there for a couple of summers. And I told him, I said, well, I've never done this before. What I'd like to do is I'm not doing anything this summer. If you can get me some kind of retainer, just give me, pay my expenses and give me some per diem. I'd like to just come out and hang out on the set. And that's the way I did it. And I stayed up there for most of the shooting. And then I'd talk to Frank, and he'd send me notes, and we'd just sort of compare. And I had a look at work cassette that I work with, and then we got down to times and segments, and then I went to New York and worked with him one summer on the movie Ola. It was pretty interesting. It was really good because it was the first time. After that, that was the point in my life where you can't look at a movie as a movie anymore, because there's, after, you see, that there's scenes. I mean, there's scenes in that movie that I was watching, cracking up, and I know where I am watching this scene happen. So that's the first time you get it from the other side. It becomes, it's not fantasy anymore. It's acting, But it was really, I enjoyed doing it, and I think it's a damn good movie. It's a real sleeper, and it's funny.
It is funny.
It is funny.
One of those little classics.
Yeah.
Is that a cowboy bar kind of place?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those are a whole different kind of bars. Maybe you could tell me listeners about, because that's a whole different kind of scene.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in Livingston, it's true. Tom had a ranch up there, and I'd go up in the summers when we first met each other and spend most of the summer up in Montana. And it's like real cowboy bar. It's not, it's like, it's funny to go to like the Lone Star in New York, which they think is a cowboy bar. I mean, people in Livingston, I mean, up to 3 or 4 years ago, used to, if they get in a fight, and go out and pace it off with 30-30s and blast at each other in the streets. I mean, it's still that way in some degrees. And there's still outlaws in the hills, and it's, Montana's that way. It's,
Do they have the little family band that plays there?
oh, yeah, and there's some great, in Livingston, there are some great bars. And a friend of mine, Toby Bruce, is a writer, did a book on great American bars a couple of years ago, and he included a couple. It's a wonderful book. I mean, it's got, like clippings from the end of World War II from the Livingston paper and buffalo heads and, souvenirs. Then they're really, and they have a small country band on the weekends, and it's a bar. It's a drinking bar. It's not anything fashionable. It's meant for one purpose alone.
Usually those places have great steaks.
Yeah, they do, and that's it. They have good. That's it, and they have a steak, and that's it. But steak is it. And there's a Mexican restaurant in Livingston called The Sport, and their version of guacamole is mayonnaise and green food color. But that's what they call guacamole. But it was fun to do that movie that way and get to meet everybody that was in it.
We got to ask you the story about this Cadillac that you stood on top of.
Oh, no, don't ask me that one. Oh.
Yeah, let's hear the Cadillac story.
Got to have that story.
Oh.
And the battering down the door on the motorcycle story
I
for
don't even know
$100.
that
Oh, that's true. But see, that I will set the record straight on that, because I need to get back at Flippo on that one. Because he wrote it. It sounds very third person-ish. We were in Chicago and working, and tried to go into this bar somewhere. And Mater D. It was supposed to be the swinging bar in Chicago. Well, it wasn't the place I would normally hang out at, but we were out howling on a Friday night. So I went to go in, and the Mater D. just started screaming, "No, you can't get in here with tennis shoes. Tennis shoes, you have on tennis shoes." And I said, "Look," "these tennis shoes I got on cost about $35. I said, "and those Tom McCanns you got on are not near what these cost." So that immediately didn't win me any favors with the guy. So we couldn't get in, and we were pretty loaded, and there was a guy on a motorcycle, and the traffic was stopped on Rush Street, and I said, "I'll give you $100 if you'll drive that motorcycle through that bar there." So Flippo wrote about it in Rolling Stone, but it sounds like it's only me. Well, he was in his wallet too, so I'll give him $100 too. So I just wanted to set the record straight on that. I told him that in New York. I said, "You make me sound like the total culprit here." I said, "I want to know that I had cooperation from both you and Mr. Azoff on this one." But the Buford Pusser story. We were finishing the album, Living and Dying 3/4 time, and just celebrating. And I was innocently looking for my car. The Buford Pusser story. We were finishing the album, Living and Dying 3/4 time, and just celebrating. And I was innocently looking for my car in the parking lot of this hotel. And the only viewpoint I could get was from the hood of this other car. And boy, it was just a matter of picking the wrong car on the wrong night, because this guy came out. I didn't know who it was at the time. I didn't know it was Buford Pusser. And he just started screaming and ranting and raving, telling us we were just hold it. He's calling the police for under arrest. So I told him, in so many words, you know what I'm trying to say, and a lot of obscenities,
You told him where he could drive his car.
Yeah, I told him to go. Yeah.
This is radio.
Right. For the listening audience, you can mentally make a note of it. But so I did that and walked to my car. And the next thing I knew, he had thrown a garbage can at the car and was reaching in and had me by the hair and pulling me out there. And I was stabbing him with a big pen. And I'm not a violent person at all. And it was the year that they had those damn safety harnesses that the car wouldn't start unless you were strapped in. So there we were, and it's funny now, and Sammy Creason, the drummer, was with me. I said, Jesus, we couldn't get the car started. Sammy couldn't get his belt because we couldn't move, and this guy's just beating us in the car up. And later that night we found out that it was Buford Pusser. Well, that's when my heart sunk, because I'd seen Walking Taller. So I immediately, after the whole incident was over, I went back. I said, oh, Lord. I said, I got to quit this, So I went into hiding in Key West, cleaned up my act. And I was just laying back trying to be good. And one night on Tom Snyder, Buford Pusser came on Tom Snyder. And I went, oh, my God, he's haunting me. And he did. He pulled this chunk of hair out of my head. And it was the next day in the car. We were just trying to get to the airport. And I looked down. I said, Sammy, I said, he pulled your hair out. It was all over the car. He said, no. Said, he pulled your hair. He punched me in the nose. His nose was like this. And I reached back, and I looked like a monk. It's this big round spot. It was one of those. I try to forget that incident. I can't forget it, but I try. I think that's when I started toning down. That's when I quit drinking tequila, for one thing, because that's what's caused it.
It sounds like you have as much fun as your songs sound like you have, though.
Yeah, well, it's the premise that there are things that are agonizing when they happen, but if you can laugh at them the next day, then it's not all that serious a deal, which is the way it usually goes. The Buford Pusser story is now really funny. At the time, it was not funny at all.
Earlier we talked about the hits, but what are your favorites?
Pirate Looks at 40 and Captain and the Kid, and I like African Friend on Son of a Son album. That's really about my favorite song on Son of a Son album. Just because I had a lot of fun writing it. It was like sort of a little project. I wanted to write a fictitious song based on fact, sort of. I just finished reading some Hemingway book for the 9th time, so I was going to try to do it in a song. That premise of, there's a little bit of fiction, but it's based on, I go to Haiti a lot, and I like it, and the casinos are real funky down there. So it was just incorporating that, and I wanted to write something in French. So there's a lot of things that I wanted to do that I got to do in that song, and it still came out to be a real nice song. Those are really, this is sort of more the ballads are my favorites.
Havana Daydream?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you gotten there? Can you go there?
No, I haven't. I'm going.
Will a boat land there?
Yeah, well, they had just had a fishing tournament there. That's when I broke my leg. I was going to. They had the first annual Ernest Hemingway Memorial Fishing Tournament, and they had like 50 boats went over from Key West to the fishing tournament. And I was supposed to go with a friend, and I broke my leg and couldn't go. I'll get there. Someday.
You have a great line in the song "Mañana." Guess which line I'm talking about? I hope Anita
Oh,
Bryant.
never ever. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I don't like her at all. It's just that, it's not the fact of any cause that she pervades. It's just that attitude. She has the answer. I don't think she does.
You heard about the poll of the high school kids? There's a poll that
that was a great one.
Ladies Home Journal conducted a poll of 800 high school kids around the country.
Yeah.
They said that the people who make them the angriest are Richard Nixon and Anita Bryant.
Yeah.
The two worst people in history were Adolf Hitler and Anita Bryant.
Of high school kids? I think that's great. It's just that it's she just it's just that all-American portrayed image that selling the orange juice and then trying to she just doesn't have the. There's something about people like that I don't like, you know. And it's
You
just,
and 50 million others.
yeah,
You know, earlier you were talking about how you people who have boats have Buffett tapes.
Yeah.
I've read you describing your music, a quote describing your music as boating music.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Because I test the albums out when I do them. I never used to listen to my own records till this friend of mine, Tom Corcoran, who does my pictures, told me, he made some. He said, "You ought to listen to these things." And so the only time I ever had a chance to do it was on the boat, and I'd go back there and because I hadn't heard a lot of their songs in a long time. I do them enough every night, and now there's so many albums and so much material, and to try to get it all in, we still do long shows. We do a 2-hour show, just about every night. But they really wear well on a boat, and it's just sort of that's where I go to check them out. And I'll go and I'll listen to them straight, or I'll listen to them stoned, or I'll listen to them, just give them the old quality control. And I write most of them. I wrote all of the Son of a Son album on the boat, and I wrote most of the Changes album on the boat. And if I'd have had a boat, I'd have probably written all the rest of them on the boat. But they just wear well there.
So who else's music do you listen to on the boat?
James Taylor is probably my favorite. Carlo Bonoff. Mellow things. We make up a lot of, it's the which I think a lot of people do. I just get all my albums and just make up a bunch of tapes of just things that are really, because if you're 8 days out at sea, I mean, and I've got outside waterproof speakers, and you just plug, and there's something that you want to listen to and pass the time of day, and it's not a place to listen to Kansas, in the middle of the Atlantic. You don't want to hear a lot of rock and roll. So my taste has sort of developed to good, mellow jazz, melodic jazz, and sort of mellow artists that I've always liked anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just put in Joni Mitchell and Carly and Jackson and people that are friends.
Mm-hmm.
You get together with the crew and sing old sea shanties?
No, we sing night moves. No, not too many sea chanties, but it's just all of a sudden there are a few songs on the tapes that will come out to be favorites. Night moves, when Disco Foot breaks out on the boat, Bob Seger goes on. For some reason, instead of What Will We Do with the Drunken Sailor, it's Night Moves for us.
I wanted to ask you about there's a great picture inside this album.
Yeah. The
Is this
inside.
Rum, Perrier, and Tums?
I'm glad you called. At that point, I wanted to do an album once. I was going to call it "Bring Back the Galley Slaves," and I wanted to do it as a movie theme, and I was talking to this friend of mine, an art director. He was art director at ABC, now works for Warner's, named Peter Wharf, and his father had been in the picture business out here for years. And I said, I'd just like to get on the set maybe once, and we could do something with an old galley slave set. And when that came out, I wanted to get everybody in the picture. And that's my road crew and the band and everybody.
Irving on the
Irving and my wife. And so I said, why don't we find us a galley ship? And I remember the Richard Pryor special where they did that one scene. I said, let's go to NBC and get us a galley set. And we'll put everybody in the picture and dress them up. Very simple. Boy, 3 days later, you'd get 18 maniacs and take them to Western costumes. And John Kosh was a dear. He did the cover. He just came up with this incredible set and built it in 2 days. We built it in this and sat there for about 6 hours shooting. And 18 people in one frame to try to get everybody in, looking at the camera. And we put on music from HMS Pinafore, and had plenty of rum, and just got crazy. And finally, we took 500, 600 pictures, and everybody gone to Western and dress up. And it was fun. It was fun. We just had a ball doing it. It was a lot of work, but when the pictures came out, it was well worth it.
A great picture. Should make a poster.
We got them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea of Irving on the phone is great.
Yeah, I'm glad he showed up.
A little anachronism.
But there's a lot of hidden things in that picture, a lot of little innuendos. I like to do it that way.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did the rum and Perrier and toast. So we threw a lot of things in there. But I just like to do covers. Covers are fun. After you do the album, that's the fun thing to me is do covers and come up with titles and try to do clever titles.
Have you ever thought of playing producer yourself?
I'm thinking about doing a couple of things with some people. We're going to do an album with Fingers, my harp player.
He's good.
Yeah, and he sings real well too.
Does he?
Yeah. So we're going to do something like that. We're going to do this live album this summer. And after we finish that, I've been thinking about doing it when I get the time. I'm interested.
Has success made more freedom for you? Meant more freedom for you? More
Actually, it has. It really has because I've cut down the time I work on the road, and since I don't go on talk shows, so my face is not known that well. So I got a good bit of anonymity, and so it does. Since I don't work the road as much, usually we were working 200 to 250 days a year up until 2 years ago. Now we do 100. So it gives me more. And my writing's gotten. I have time. I don't have to cram it all into one segment now. I can write a lot easier, and then I get time to spend, at home, and a lot more time on the boat, which results in better songs. And yeah, it has meant a lot more. And it might seem like a reversal, but because I don't go after, I'm not particularly interested in being on People magazine cover or on the Mike Douglas show. That doesn't interest me, and I don't need to do it, so I don't. So I just stay away from that, and it doesn't, it's no more difficult than it has been for the last 5 years.
Yeah, you just great desire to be an enormous superstar.
No.
You want to act or try stuff like that?
I don't think so. If there was a good swashbuckler or a good smuggling movie, yeah, I'd probably go for it, But it'd have to be something right.
They're remaking Captain from Castillo or...
Yeah, something in that line. Sure, I'd do it. Or if I'd like to just be a Klingon in a Star Trek movie just for the hell of it, or something. Just a cameo appearance. But I'd rather go at an approach from writing or from doing a score. McGuane and I've always thought about collaborating. Maybe we'll get to do that this winter. So
how are we doing with your cards?
I've done mine.
Oh, I don't use cards. Any goals for the future before we wrap it up?
I'm just really looking forward to getting this live album done because I think we're a better band live than we are. We do good on records, but I think it's just the spontaneity when we do a show is something I really want to capture. And we have so many good older songs now with the band that we play better than they are on the record. So, and I want to do it fun and just put a lot of humor into it. And it's going to be called "We Are Our Own Best Time."
What about the humor in your music? That's people have remarked about that.
It's always, it's the only way. It's always been the way I write. It's just there are enough people out there writing serious songs. So I've always written sort of the lighter side, and I just like to. It's fun for me to do it that way.
You have a real good time on stage, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
You always look like you're having a blast.
I do. I'll do it. And if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. I'd quit.
I read a quote from you quoting Lord Buckley about terror being the absence of humor.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great line. It's I can't remember it now, but it's. I met his daughter. They're doing a book on Lord Buckley. I met her in Las Vegas, named Laurie Buckley, and she called me up to ask me how I'd gotten. As she came to the show, and so I told her the story of how I found God's Undrunk, or how I came to do it. And she's doing a book on Lord Buckley that should be pretty interesting, and he was a big influence, more so than most people think. But there's that great story. The absence, the terror's absence of humor. It's, and it was the thing, the H-bomb, if we could just laugh at it, it wouldn't be so deadly. It's a great piece he does on one of those albums.
I probably have it.
Yeah.
Bob and Ray, you've listened to Bob.
Bob and Ray, yeah. Bob and Ray, Jonathan Winters. I think Jonathan Winters is just
people that told funny stories rather than jokes.
Yeah, they told, they told, Elwood P. Suggins and Chester Honeyhugger. And Bob and Ray are just, I think that's the essence of humor is the fact that it's chronologically there's no bounds. Bob and Ray are 60 years old, but they can make me laugh just about as much as Richard Pryor. And they've always, and I'm one that'll go to a movie and just roll, and people don't want to sit near me in a movie. I'll kick the front seat and roll around and laugh. And it's just, I think that that true life experiences, you can't help but go through this life and have some things to just happen that are just outrageously funny.
If
Spike
we weren't
Jones?
all crazy.
Spike Jones, yeah.
If we weren't all crazy,
We
we'd
would go insane. That's kept me alive on a few occasions, yeah.
Well, gee, thank you very much.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Absolutely.
That's a wrap, guys.
Okay.